Maya had never thought she'd see Aaron again. When she finally ended things with him 3 years ago, she was sure that chapter of her life was closed for good. The relationship had been a roller coaster of emotions, mostly steeped in his jealousy and controlling behavior. But after countless arguments and threats, she'd broken free. Or so she thought. Life had been peaceful since then. She'd moved to a new city, gotten a new job, and even started seeing someone new. Alex was everything Aaron wasn't: kind, supportive, and understanding. For the first time in years, Maya felt like she could breathe again. It started with the phone calls. They were always from unknown numbers, and whenever she answered, the line would be silent. She'd hang up, shrug it off, and go about her day. But the calls became more frequent, always at odd hours early in the morning or late at night. It was annoying, but she didn't think much of it. After all, it could be telemarketers or wrong numbers. She blocked the unknown numbers and moved on. Then, she began to notice things out of place in her apartment. At first, it was small, an open window she was sure she'd closed, a book moved from its usual spot, a cup in the sink that she hadn't used. She told herself she was being paranoid, that she was just forgetting things in her busy day-to-day life. But the feeling of being watched was harder to shake. One evening, as she sat in her living room watching TV, her phone buzzed. It was a text message from an unknown number. "You look beautiful tonight." Maya froze, her eyes darting around the room. The curtains were drawn, and she was alone. Her heart pounded in her chest as she typed back, trying to keep her hands steady. "Who is this?" A moment later, another message appeared. "You'll see me soon." Maya's blood ran cold. She immediately called Alex, her voice shaking as she told him about the messages. He came over right away, and together they went to the police. The officers took her report, but there wasn't much they could do. Without a specific threat or proof of who was sending the messages, they couldn't take action. They advised her to be cautious, but Maya already felt anything but safe. The messages continued, growing more disturbing by the day. They described what she was wearing, what she was doing, even the expressions on her face. It was clear whoever was sending them was watching her closely. She changed her phone number, but the messages somehow found their way to her new line. She installed security cameras in her apartment, but they revealed nothing unusual. No one came in or out except her. One night, after a particularly unsettling day, Maya woke up in the middle of the night to a strange noise. It was faint, like a whispering breeze, but there was no wind outside. She sat up in bed, her eyes scanning the darkness. Then she heard it again, closer this time, a low, breathy sound. It was coming from inside her room. She reached for her phone, trying to turn on the flashlight, but her hands were trembling too much. The sound grew louder, more distinct. It wasn't just a breeze, it was breathing. Ragged, shallow breathing. Maya's heart leaped into her throat as she realized the sound was coming from under her bed. She felt paralyzed with fear, unable to move or even scream. Slowly, she reached down, her hand shaking as she lifted the edge of the blanket to peer underneath. Two eyes stared back at her. She screamed, scrambling out of bed and running for the door. She barely made it out before she heard a thud behind her. Whoever was under the bed was coming after her. She bolted down the hallway, not daring to look back, and burst out of her apartment. She didn't stop running until she reached the street, breathless and terrified. She frantically dialed Alex, her voice trembling as she told him what had happened. He urged her to come to his place, and she agreed, too scared to go back to her apartment. When the police arrived at her apartment, they found no signs of forced entry, and nothing appeared to be missing. But the bed had been disturbed, and there were muddy footprints leading out of her bedroom window. Maya couldn't stay there any longer. She packed a bag and went to stay with Alex. For a while, things seemed to calm down. The messages stopped and she started to feel safe again. But the fear never really left her. One night, as she and Alex were sitting on the couch watching a movie, her phone buzzed. Her heart sank as she saw the message notification. With trembling hands, she opened it. "Miss me." Maya's blood ran cold. She looked at Alex, her face pale. "He's back," she whispered. Alex took her phone, his face hardening as he read the message. "We're going to the police. They can't ignore this anymore." But as they stood to leave, there was a loud knock on the door. Both of them froze, staring at the door in silence. The knock came again, more insistent this time. Maya shook her head, backing away. "Don't answer it," she whispered. Alex approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. "There's no one out there," he said, his voice laced with confusion. The knocking stopped. Alex waited a moment before slowly unlocking the door. He opened it just a crack, enough to see outside. But as he did, the door was violently shoved open, knocking him to the ground. Standing in the doorway was Aaron. His once handsome face was twisted into a mask of rage and obsession. His eyes, wide and wild, locked onto Maya. "You thought you could get away from me," he hissed, stepping into the apartment. Maya screamed, backing away as Aaron advanced on her. Alex scrambled to his feet, trying to stop him, but Aaron was stronger, driven by a twisted determination. He pushed Alex aside, his focus entirely on Maya. "You belong to me." Aaron snarled, grabbing her arm with a bruising grip. "No one else can have you." Maya struggled, trying to free herself, but Aaron was relentless. She managed to break free, stumbling back into the kitchen. Her hand closed around a knife on the counter, and without thinking, she swung it at Aaron as he lunged at her. The knife sank into his side, and he gasped, stumbling back. For a moment, he just stared at her, shock and betrayal in his eyes. Then he crumpled to the floor, blood pooling around him. Maya stood frozen, the knife still in her hand, as Alex rushed to her side. "Maya, it's okay, it's over," he said, gently taking the knife from her and pulling her into his arms. But as she looked down at Aaron's lifeless body, she knew it would never truly be over. The nightmare might have ended, but the scars would remain forever. And somewhere, deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that Aaron's unseen eyes were still watching, waiting for the right moment to return.